At 67 years old, she sat in a rented apartment in her fourth country in 14 months, opening a spreadsheet she had been maintaining since the beginning of what she now refers to, with some self-deprecating humor, as her retirement research expedition, and found herself staring at a specific line item. Total spent on exploratory travel, $10,240, a figure that had, at various points during the process, made her seriously question whether the entire undertaking represented responsible research or an increasingly expensive form of avoidance. This is her story, and she wanted it told with genuine specificity about what she actually compared and why the eventual answer surprised her, because she said the country she ultimately chose was not the one her original research had suggested was most likely. She had retired at 65 from a 37-year career as a hospital pharmacist, with a combination of a pension and Social Security, providing approximately $3,400 monthly, a figure that placed her in a considerably more comfortable financial position than many of the retirement stories this channel has covered. Genuinely comfortable in the United States, but not, she felt, comfortable enough to fund the specific kind of retirement she had spent decades imagining, one involving genuine leisure, travel, and a meaningfully lower daily cost of living than her suburban Minneapolis expenses allowed. Rather than selecting a single destination based on online research and forum recommendations, the approach that most people considering this decision default to, she made a specific and, in retrospect, genuinely valuable decision to treat the choice itself as requiring the same rigor she had applied throughout her professional career to evaluating pharmaceutical protocols, gathering direct, extended, comparative data rather than relying on second-hand accounts or brief vacation-style visits. She identified 4 countries through initial research: Portugal, Mexico, Thailand, and the Philippines, each appearing consistently in retirement planning resources for reasons she found genuinely credible: favorable cost of living, established expat communities, reasonable healthcare infrastructure, and relatively accessible visa pathways for American retirees. She committed to spending a minimum of 6 weeks in each location, living as close to her actual anticipated daily life as possible, rather than in tourist accommodations, specifically to generate genuinely comparable data across all 4. Before we get into what she actually found, subscribe right now and turn on the notification bell. Every week on this channel, we share real, honest stories of Americans starting over overseas. Not the polished version, the honest one. Subscribe now so you never miss one. Portugal, her first stop, had entered her research with the strongest initial appeal, driven by consistently favorable coverage in retirement publications and a well-established, specific visa pathway for American retirees that she found genuinely straightforward to navigate. She spent her 6 weeks primarily in a smaller coastal town outside Lisbon and found the actual daily experience genuinely pleasant: excellent food, a strong healthcare system, and a level of general infrastructure and predictability that felt comfortably familiar coming from an American professional background. Her total costs during that period, tracked with the same precision she applied throughout, ran to approximately $2,600 monthly when calculated at a full-time living rate rather than tourist-level spending, a figure that would have consumed a considerable portion of her fixed income while leaving meaningfully less margin than she had hoped for. She also noted a specific and, to her, somewhat unexpected difficulty with the language, finding that despite reasonably widespread English fluency in tourist-adjacent contexts, genuine daily integration into community life beyond that surface level required Portuguese proficiency she had not anticipated needing to build from essentially nothing at 65. Mexico, her second stop, offered a specific advantage the other 3 locations could not: proximity, a factor she had initially underweighted in her original research, but came to consider considerably more significant once she experienced it directly. She spent her 6 weeks in a mid-sized city in the Central Highlands, chosen specifically for its established American retiree community and moderate climate, and found her actual monthly costs, tracked with the same rigor, running to approximately $1,900, meaningfully lower than Portugal and closer to what she had originally hoped to find. The proximity to the United States, she noted, carried a specific and genuinely significant benefit beyond simple travel convenience, a considerably shorter and less disorienting flight for any family emergency, a factor that several other individual stories on this channel have identified as a genuine source of regret when overlooked during initial planning. Her specific difficulty in Mexico centered on a particular city she had chosen, one that, while offering genuine value, did not produce the kind of immediate personal connection to the physical environment and daily rhythm that she found herself specifically looking for once she had two data points to compare against each other. Thailand, her third stop, had appeared prominently in nearly every general retirement abroad resource she consulted, and she approached her 6 weeks there with genuinely high expectations based on that consistent recommendation. She found the healthcare infrastructure specifically impressive, private hospital quality in the specific city she visited that exceeded, by her professional assessment as a former hospital pharmacist, what she had experienced in either Portugal or Mexico, at costs that remained considerably lower than equivalent American care. Her monthly living costs ran to approximately $1,700, the lowest of the 3 countries visited to that point. But she identified a specific and, to her, somewhat difficult to articulate factor that ultimately outweighed the genuinely favorable financial and healthcare data, a persistent sense of cultural distance that she found herself unable to fully close even after 6 weeks of genuine effort. A feeling she was careful to describe not as any negative reflection on the country or its people, but as a specific and honest acknowledgement that the particular cultural framework, communication norms, and daily social rhythm she encountered did not, for reasons she could not fully articulate even in retrospect, produce the sense of gradual, organic integration she had experienced building, even briefly, in her other 3 destinations. The Philippines, her fourth and final comparison stop, was the location she had originally expected, based purely on the financial and infrastructure data she had gathered before ever departing, to rank lowest among her 4 options, given a specifically higher healthcare cost profile relative to Thailand and a less internationally prominent retiree visa pathway compared to Portugal's more established program. She arrived with genuinely modest expectations, treating the visit largely as a formality to complete her comparative research, rather than anticipating any particular outcome. What she found instead, within roughly the first 10 days, was a specific and unexpected sense of ease in daily social interaction that none of her previous 3 stops had produced with comparable speed, a directness and warmth in casual daily exchanges with market vendors, neighbors, the staff at her rented accommodation, that felt, by her own honest assessment, considerably less effortful to build than the equivalent relationships she had spent 6 weeks attempting to establish in each previous location. She wanted to be direct that she could not fully quantify or explain this specific difference in a way that translated into a repeatable methodology for anyone else conducting similar research, an honest acknowledgement she felt mattered considerably given how much of her story otherwise emphasized rigorous, quantifiable comparison. Her monthly costs in the Philippines, tracked with the same precision applied throughout, ran to approximately $2,100, meaningfully higher than either Mexico or Thailand, and her healthcare infrastructure assessment, drawing on her professional background, rated the specific facilities she investigated as competent but genuinely less sophisticated than what she had encountered in Thailand's private hospital system. By nearly every quantifiable metric in her original spreadsheet, the Philippines should not have been her final choice. She chose it anyway, specifically because the qualitative dimension of daily social ease and genuine warmth of casual interaction, a factor she had included in her original comparison framework but had, by her own admission, considered secondary to the more easily quantified financial and infrastructure data, ultimately outweighed every other metric once she had genuinely comparable direct experience across all 4 locations to weigh it against. When asked what she would tell someone beginning a similar comparative research process, Her answer focused specifically on the value and limitation of quantifiable data working in tandem with genuine, extended, non-tourist experience of daily life. She strongly recommended the comparative methodology itself, gathering real cost of living data, healthcare quality assessments, and visa pathway information across multiple genuine candidates, rather than defaulting to a single popular destination based on second-hand recommendation. But she was equally direct that the spreadsheet alone, however rigorously maintained, would not have produced her actual final decision, which depended on a specific qualitative dimension, the felt experience of daily social ease and genuine community warmth, that only extended direct experience, living as an ordinary resident rather than a tourist, in each candidate location, could actually reveal. If you are watching this and are beginning to research your own retirement abroad options, comparing destinations primarily through cost of living calculators and online forum recommendations, the way most people initially approach this decision, she wanted to leave you with the specific reframe her $10,000 research process eventually produced. The quantifiable data, cost of living, healthcare infrastructure, visa accessibility, matters genuinely and should be gathered with real rigor across multiple candidates, rather than assumed based on a single destination's reputation. But budget, if you genuinely can, for extended direct experience in your top several candidates, living as an ordinary resident rather than a tourist for a meaningful stretch of weeks rather than days, because the specific factor that ultimately determined her own decision was not one any spreadsheet, however carefully constructed, could have identified from research alone. Subscribe to Second Life Abroad and turn on the notification bell. Share this with someone you know who is beginning to research retirement abroad and assumes the decision can be made entirely through online comparison without genuine direct experience. We will see you in the next one. There is a specific methodological detail she wanted included because she felt it addressed a question she has received repeatedly from people attempting to replicate her comparative approach on a more modest budget than her own, since she readily acknowledged that a $10,000 research process was not realistically available to everyone considering this decision. She recommended, for anyone unable to fund extended stays in multiple full countries, a scaled-down version of the same underlying methodology, rather than abandoning the comparative approach entirely. This involved selecting 2, rather than 4, genuinely serious candidate countries based on initial research, and committing to a minimum of 3 weeks, rather than 6, in each, a duration she believed still sufficient to move meaningfully beyond tourist-level impressions into something closer to the genuine daily texture of ordinary resident life, particularly if the visitor made a specific effort to establish a consistent daily routine, a regular market, a regular coffee spot, a regular walking route, rather than treating the visit as an extended sightseeing trip. She estimated this scaled approach could be accomplished for approximately $2,500 to $3,000 total across both countries, a considerably more modest but still meaningful investment relative to the risk being evaluated, the potential relocation of one's entire remaining retirement. She also wanted to address, directly, a specific tension in how she now discusses her own research process with others, since she said she has a